Elements of fiction. Figures of speech. As we know, authors use words to help readers create images in their minds. Most words are literal. They mean what they say. But sometimes authors use more creative or figurative language. Why do writers use figurative language? In order to draw attention to the language and to communicate the experience more effectively. For example, deeply in love, a young man tells his friend, "My girlfriend is very beautiful." It is clearly a straightforward statement. On the other hand, Robert Burns, a Scottish poet, says the same thing, but in more poetic words. "My love is like a red rose." This is what we would call figurative use of language. By comparing the above sentences, we must have got an idea about what a figure of speech is. The first statement gives us the literal meaning, whereas in the second, words are used in a way that is different from their literal meaning. When we read, "My love is like a red rose," the sentence evokes images of a beautiful red rose and a very young rosy-cheeked girl who is as beautiful as this exquisite flower. Do poets alone use figures of speech? No, figures of speech are used in all types of writing: prose, poetry, drama. In fact, we too use figurative language in our daily conversation. When we say, "He drinks like a fish," or "It's raining cats and dogs," we are using figurative language. Personification. This involves giving human characteristics, powers, or feelings to objects or to abstract qualities. The purpose is to make the description more vivid and concrete. The writer speaks of something which is non-human, as it were human. For example, "The sun traced his footsteps across the sky" is a more poetic way of expressing the passing of a day. Personification can sometimes be used to invoke an emotional response to something by making it more personable, friendly, and relatable. Personification gives human qualities to animals or objects. Example: "I cannot see in this tall grass. Moon," cried the tiger. So Moon smiled down, while wind puffed her cheeks and blew the grass aside. In this example, the tiger has the human ability to speak, the moon can smile, and the wind has human-like cheeks and a mouth. Readers relate to the actions because they share the qualities. Personification adds interest to some stories, especially fables and myths, that teach lessons about life and human behavior. Simile. Our simile is a comparison between different terms belonging to different classes, for the purpose of describing one of them. The comparison is usually made by the use of connectives, such as, like, or, as. For example, when we say, "as sweet as honey," or "white like snow," we are using similes. But if we say, "Ujang is like a jang," is this a simile? No, because Ujang and a jang belong to the same class, namely, male human beings. This is often used to make an emotional point about something. The difference between simile and metaphor is that you can obviously see words, like, in the sentence.
Metaphor. The use of metaphor compares two things that are not alike, and finds something about them to make them alike. But here, there is no direct comparison as in a simile. nor are any connectives, such as like and as, used. The writer uses an expression which describes one thing by stating another. For example, we can say, "The road snaked its way up the mountain." Here, the word snaked is used metaphorically. The word snaked suggests a winding path. You must have noticed that there is no direct comparison between the snake and the course of the road. The comparison with the snake is indirect and implied. Similes and metaphors are two kinds of figurative language that authors use to add interest to their writing. Our simile compares two things by using the words like or as. Example: I was so embarrassed, my face was as red as a beet. How can the author compare a person's face to a vegetable? They're so different. True, but they are alike in one way. Both are red. Picturing this can help you visualize the character and understand his or her motives in a story. A metaphor compares two things without using like or as. The text states that one thing is or has the characteristics of another. Example: the dog's eyes were searchlights, looking for any sign of kindness. Is the author trying to get you to picture a dog with huge searchlights for eyes? No, the author wants you to visualize a poor dog staring intently, looking for kindness from a stranger.
Hyperbole. Hyperbole is often seen as an exaggeration for the sake of effect, that adds a bit of humor to a story. For example, we often say, "I nearly died of laughing." We often use hyperbolic expressions without realizing it. For examples, "My grandmother is as old as the hills." "Your suitcase weighs a ton." "She is heavy as an elephant." "I am dying of shame." "I am trying to solve a million issues these days." Metonymy. In this figure of speech, one word that has a very similar meaning can be used for another. Using the word crown for royalty or lab coats for scientists are two examples. In some ways, it can be seen as a nickname for something else. For instance, "The White House said" doesn't actually mean the White House said it. A house can't speak, but that the president said it. However, we all understand the meaning, and so the words are interchangeable. Let us look again at this sentence. "I enjoy listening to Iwan Vals." What does this mean? Iwan Vals is the name of a great musician, and when we say, "I enjoy listening to Iwan Vals," we mean that we enjoy listening to his music. Here, the person's name is substituted for that of his music. In short, metonymy means change of name. Synecdoche. This is a figure of speech in which one thing is meant to represent the whole. A few good examples include ABCs for alphabet, new set of wheels for car, or 9/11 to demonstrate the whole of the tragedy that happened in the United States on September 11, 2001. This is often used in journalism as a type of shorthand. Synecdoche, then, is a figure of speech in which we use a word referring only to a part of something instead of the whole, wheels instead of a vehicle. You may have heard the expressing, "Doctor on wheels." What does this mean? Wheels here stand for transport, and the doctor in question certainly has this facility. Understatement, or Litotes. This is the opposite of hyperbole. Instead of exaggeration, the author expresses him or herself with restraint. The British are known for their habit of understatement. If someone is looking extremely ill, the Englishman may just say, "You do look a bit under the weather." Or, for a person who died of a bullet shot, "He stopped a bullet last night, poor chap." Irony. This figure of speech tries to use a word in a literal sense that debunks what has just been said. "Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room," from Dr. Strangelove, is a great example. It is often used to poke fun at a situation that everyone else sees as a very serious matter. This is one of the most important figures of speech in English. Irony is saying one thing while meaning another. In short, irony occurs when a word or phrase has one surface meaning and another different meaning beneath this surface. The reader must be able to understand the hidden meaning. Example: if a woman walks into a job interview and she is sloppily dressed with only 2 teeth in her head, and the interview says, "You have a beautiful smile." Alliteration. This is a very common figure of speech that involves using words that begin with the same sound. For instance, Sally sells seashells by the seashore is alliteration, and try saying it fast to see how difficult it is. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. It is often used in advertising slogans to create something catchy that more people will remember. Around the rugged rocks the ragged rascal ran is an example of alliteration, where the consonant R is used repeatedly. Alliteration, repetition of sounds or syllables, especially initial consonants.